The American criminal justice system is often portrayed through the lens of dramatic courtroom trials, but the reality is far more bureaucratic and the outcome is far more predictable than most people realize. Roughly 90 to 95% of all criminal cases in the United States never go to trial. They are resolved through plea bargains, deals where the defendant agrees to plead guilty to a charge, often a lesser one, in exchange for a lighter sentence. Understanding how the criminal process actually works from arrest to potential verdict requires understanding this reality. The trial you see on television represents a tiny fraction of the system's actual operation. This is legal education, not legal advice. Consult a licensed attorney for guidance on your specific situation. The process begins with an arrest, which requires probable cause, a reasonable belief based on specific facts that the person has committed a crime. After arrest comes booking, fingerprinting, photographing, recording personal information, and a database check. The first court appearance is called an arraignment, typically within 24 to 72 hours of arrest. At arraignment, the charges are formally read. The defendant enters a plea, and bail is addressed. Bail is money or other security posted to guarantee the defendant will appear at future hearings. The Eighth Amendment prohibits excessive bail, and bail reform has been an active policy debate in recent years, with critics arguing that cash bail disproportionately punishes poor defendants for being poor. After arraignment, there is typically a bail hearing or detention hearing where the prosecution can argue for detention without bail if the defendant poses a flight risk or danger to the community. Then comes either a preliminary hearing or a grand jury proceeding, depending on the jurisdiction and the seriousness of the charges. A preliminary hearing is a court proceeding where a judge determines whether there is probable cause to proceed to trial. A grand jury is a secret proceeding where prosecutors present evidence to a group of citizens who decide whether to issue an indictment. The Fifth Amendment requires a grand jury indictment for serious federal crimes. Grand juries almost always indict. As the saying goes, a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich. Pretrial motions are a critical phase, often invisible to the public but enormously consequential. Defense attorneys file motions to suppress evidence obtained in violation of the Fourth Amendment, motions to dismiss charges for insufficient evidence or prosecutorial misconduct, motions to change venue, and many others. Brady v. Maryland in 1963 established the constitutional rule that prosecutors must disclose exculpatory evidence, material that tends to show innocence or mitigate punishment, to the defense. Brady violations, where prosecutors hide favorable evidence, are a significant cause of wrongful convictions. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the right to a speedy trial and the right to confront witnesses against you, both of which can be enforced through pretrial motions. If a case actually goes to trial, the defendant has the Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial for serious criminal charges. Jurors must unanimously agree on a verdict in federal courts and most states. The prosecution must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard of proof in our legal system, not just the balance of probability or clear and convincing evidence. The defendant has no obligation to testify, present evidence, or prove anything. The Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination means prosecutors cannot comment on the defendant's choice not to testify, and juries should not draw negative inferences from silence. Sentencing occurs after a guilty verdict and is increasingly constrained by mandatory minimum laws and federal sentencing guidelines. The Fifth Amendment's double jeopardy clause prohibits prosecuting someone twice for the same offense after acquittal or conviction. But the dual sovereignty doctrine creates a significant exception. The federal government and state governments are separate sovereigns, so the same conduct can sometimes be prosecuted at both the state and federal level without violating double jeopardy. This was famously used to prosecute police officers for civil rights violations in federal court after acquittal in state court following the Rodney King case in 1992. Appeals from criminal convictions are limited in scope and do not retry the facts of the case. They review for legal errors in the trial. Post-conviction relief through habeas corpus allows challenges to custody based on constitutional violations. This is legal education, not advice for your specific situation.